The Eagle Tribune, 19th of July 2023, China as the new global threat syndrome. China reportedly established and maintained electronic monitoring capabilities in Cuba, our neighbor in the Western Hemisphere, only 90 miles from the U.S. mainland. According to even more recent allegations, China will reportedly construct new military training facilities on the island nation. Our government leaders initially denied the existence of the surveillance sites in the wake of these revelations, but they later softened their stance. The administration also appears surprised by the proposed military training complex. When these two events are considered together with China's launch of a spy balloon that flew over America and returned information to China about some of our nuclear weapons locations, one can see a dramatic increase in Beijing's disregard for what Chairman Mao Zedong once referred to as the paper tiger. Be clear, Biden's America is a paper tiger constructed of papier-mâché, not just any paper tiger. It feels like a birthday pieta beating on his foreign policy. He oversees the first European conflict since Nazi Germany was defeated in 1945. His haphazard distribution of arms to Ukraine has prolonged the battle because Ukraine only received enough weapons to support its defense rather than deliver a devastating blow to Putin's forces. From Beijing's perspective, American bases in Taiwan, an island republic only 100 miles from the Chinese mainland, are no different from Chinese military outposts in Cuba, the fundamental tit-for-tat. The Monroe Doctrine, which bears the name of former American President James Monroe, will be familiar to history students if any are left. His theory, which he laid out in an address to Congress in December 1823, essentially outlined America's attitude against any additional attempts by Europe to colonize the Western Hemisphere or install puppet governments there. Its goal was to keep the concerns of the New World distinct from those of the Old, and it also placed comparable restrictions on America's relations with Europe. Naturally, European intervention at the time was America's top concern rather than Asia. America is currently threatened by Asia, Russia, and the Middle East. The Monroe Doctrine isn't spoken very much today, yet its core idea still holds. No other country is allowed to meddle with our hemisphere. The doctrine was tested during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 when President Kennedy confronted Russian President Nikita Khrushchev over his plans to place nuclear weapons in Cuba. The peaceful removal of American nuclear weapons from Turkey, a neighboring neighbor to Russia, was a condition of the deal with Khrushchev, even though this battle of nerves was celebrated as a significant success for America and its young president against the grizzled Khrushchev, another fundamental tit-for-tat. What does this mean for us now? We learn that China wants to invade Taiwan every week. According to others, China would use Putin's aggressiveness in Ukraine as a model to overthrow Taiwan. It's also claimed that by supporting Ukraine, we're showing the Chinese that any attempt to attack Taiwan will be greeted with American resistance, even if that means sending in troops. Given the current ties between China and the US, I doubt China will invade Taiwan. That includes any sinister connections between the Biden family and the communist nation. Put, we and they are currently too economically entrenched. However, China's covert plan to set up military and spying facilities in Cuba puts the United States in a precarious position. While China has developed into a major economic and diplomatic player in regions like Africa, South America, the Middle East, and elsewhere, its recent military foray into our hemisphere has increased the stakes. Sadly, our commander-in-chief is not up to the challenge in this crucial chess match. I also don't have a lot of faith in our military and diplomatic leaders to create a deterrent strategy that will curb China's ambitions. To find out where these Chinese installations are, does the US threaten to attack Cuba? Do we erect a blockade similar to the one in 1962? Or do we strike an agreement similar to what Kennedy and Khrushchev agreed upon? If only the Chinese would withdraw their military resources and return home, I can picture Biden dialing Xi on his red phone and making some kind of deal regarding Taiwan. The alternative is that if Biden sends in troops, does Beijing not have permission to do the same in Taiwan? Does anyone believe that conflict can be avoided in light of all this strife between the two largest economies in the world? The best way to defeat China is to refocus our economic priorities on our hemisphere rather than the communist superpower. Imagine that our multinational corporations decide to invest in our southern neighbors instead of China. America can choose where to eat, but it can't control its ravenous desire for consumer goods. Improved economy in those countries that send their migrants through our borders in large numbers would be an added benefit.